Hi.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can see you.
Excellent.
How are you feeling?
Not too bad. I'll try and mute every time I need a cough, and if it's bad, I'll put video off as well, so you don't see me spluttering in the background.
All right. Well, we just want to welcome you and thank you for coming. We have been talking about the book for about 30 minutes and everybody's been, pretty active and had a lot to say. And, we've got a nice list of questions for you. And we've got Jess and I have our chats open if you want to send questions. So if you're good to go, Claire, it sounds like you're feeling a little bit better today, which is good.
Yeah, I'm hoping I last for a bit. Sorry if I have to break off every so often, but in general, I should be okay.
Oh no, you take care of yourself. We're just excited to have you here. And, if you only answer 5 questions, we'll be thrilled. So, all right. Well, we've got, let's see, I'm gonna start you with like a softer question. So when you lived in Oxford, did you visit all the places you mentioned to be able to describe them so brilliantly?
I think so. I'm trying to think now. I lived there for over 10 years, and yeah, places like Covered Market I would go to regularly. There's certainly you used to walk into town. I'm quite a visual person, so I can remember it quite clearly. So it's a part of the appeal of the book for me is to go back and visit and wander around those streets and see everything again. I don't think. I'm trying to think if there was a setting that I hadn't visited. I think I've only been like the Ashmolean Museum, the restaurant at the top, when that opened, I didn't have enough money to go in, so I actually hadn't been in there. So I had a day in Oxford with my wife in the summer and nipped up there to see, check what it was like and take some pictures as well. But otherwise, that's like I say, that's part of the appeal for the book for me. I mean, there are so many amazing settings in Oxford. I could write book after book set there and never visit the same place twice and still have just amazingly appealing places. It is a pretty magic place to live, and I feel very lucky that I had a chance to live there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you kind of brought up you could write a bunch of books, and I have about 4 or 5 questions here that all relate to it says it's part of a series. People want to know how many books we can expect for the series, when we might see the next one. We've got a lot of people that are really curious if you'll share with us anybody that's going to be a main character in a subsequent book that maybe we've met before. Got lots of questions around that if you're willing to share whatever you're comfortable sharing in that regard.
Okay. Yeah, I have 3 in total planned. I've had right from the start, characters, general outline of the story, and a rough kind of arc of the whole series as well. The next one I'm planning for right at the beginning of next year. It's dependent on a few things like getting a cover for it as well, and me actually sitting on my arse and typing the damn thing out as well. It sounds really mean, but I don't want to say anything at all about the upcoming books because it never, for a couple of reasons. Once I start telling people a story, I've told the story, and then I lose interest and I won't actually get my ass in that chair and write the damn thing down. So that first draft has to be the first time I tell the story. Otherwise, I'll get distracted with people saying, well, that sounds rubbish, because the other point is that I'm really shit at describing stories. I could never give a sort of compelling description. I can't write blurbs. I can write, I think, a captivating story over 100,000 words, that's fine, but distilling it down to kind of what's the hook for me, I'm really awful at that. So I was up visiting Carrie Hunter in the summer and her wife, and they were saying, like, come on, tell us about your book, because I got past the first draft by that point. What's the hook for you? What makes it different? Why is it, compelling? Why are people going to read it? And they was like, well, it's like these 2 friends, right? And they really like each other, and I really like them, and they're just really nice. and they both looked at me like, well, okay, that's kind of, so this is the kind of reaction that I get to my description. So I just have to get through that first draft first, and then just show it to people rather than describe it. Otherwise, it goes horribly wrong. I have, abandoned a couple of books for those reasons. So I'm sorry, it's a bit mean, but I'm not sharing, I'm afraid.
Well, I think we'd all rather get the books and you not share. So I think it's a price we're willing to pay. I completely understand. I've got one more question here. And then after that, Jess, if you want to see if your mic's good to go and we can kind of go back and forth. So this person says, I remember back in January, you talked to Laura from the Sapphic Book Review podcast about the book we're discussing today. And you said there was a line that made you laugh out loud every time you read it, but you didn't say which line. Ever since I read it, I laughed a few times, but I have to ask, what was that line? Get us out of doubt.
Oh, right. Yeah, fair enough, because it's out now, isn't it? I bet it's made nobody else laugh. It's kind of, it's the humor, especially so personal, isn't it? Excuse me. It's just when Charlotte's in the Ashmolean Museum with Nicola, and she's for the first time, and she's remembering that kiss from Millie in front of her years ago, and Nicola saying how she didn't doubt that Charlotte was gay after that, because you couldn't hide that kind of reaction, which is just so humiliating for Charlotte. It's awful. I mean, it makes me cringe as well. And then she adds really damningly, you couldn't anyway, because it's just so excruciating for Charlotte, for me, and it's so god awful of Nicola and funny at the same time. That's, but yeah, it's probably just me. That's why I didn't share it earlier.
I definitely appreciated that Nicola's humor was occasionally meanness was occasionally very funny.
It was, I love her as a character. I find her fascinating. I think she's intimidating, scary, impressive, and just god awful all in one. So I love that kind of character. Well, all of them are flawed, and I love flawed characters, because people are flawed, and I want flawed people to have happy ever afters in the end. So, but yeah, there's a whole bunch of them in this one. Blimey, they all have their issues.
Okay, so I've got one question, but then I've also got a point to say before that. Ellen Lane sent me this after you were talking about Oxford. She said, you made it come alive for me. I was fortunate enough to visit there in 2000. We stayed in Eafley, walked the towpath, went to Blackwell's. Thank you so much for the trip down memory lane. So wanted to make sure that you knew that.
That's really lovely. It's really nice when people have visited before and think, yes, it's really accurate. You've got the essence of it there, without going into too much of a description, just to kind of bring it alive in little pieces. So it's really lovely to hear that it worked.
It is. You did. I've never been, and I felt like I was there. So one of my questions here is, it's a bit of a heavy one. What research did you do for the endometriosis and miscarriage representation? Because you portrayed it really well, and it's a very heavy topic. So what did you do for it?
I'll answer this in general, actually. I tend to write about things that I know about from one perspective, or someone close to me knows about or has experienced, so that I have a good knowledge of it. So I won't go into it because it would be too personal to me or other people. For those many other people that I know well. But I do this a lot, actually, that I tend to pick on elements or issues that I have a little bit of knowledge about, or enough of an understanding that I have kind of, the emotional crux of it right, or I'm confident about that. And I might need to do sort of supplementary research just to check little details. But I tend to write about things I know very well, and places I know very well, like Oxford, for example, are kind of, I'd rather not have to research it and visit again. I'd rather just have it all in my head and just be able to put the feel of a place down, because I understand it well enough, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. I have another question here from Alona. How did you get inspired to write Charlotte's and Millie's characters?
I think Millie came first. I've been dying to write somebody like Millie for books and books and books. And that kind of very outspoken, blunt, brash, extrovert, somebody who's confident sexually, is just a big character in every single way. I love characters like that. They're usually sidekicks and best friends, but I had planned her when I wrote Finding Jessica Lambert, I originally wanted that to be a series, and I would have had a character like that as one of the mains, but I only did the second book of that idea. So Millie came first, and then kind of I refined her with Charlotte as her foil and opposite in so many ways. So it's Millie, wanting to do a Millie character that came first.
Nice. And what about Charlotte?
What was the original question? Sorry.
How did you get inspired to write Charlotte and Millie's characters?
Yeah, well, it's because she was I wanted somebody to be quite different, sort of. So Charlotte came across, as somebody different in just so many ways. I wanted them to sort of rub up against each other and bounce off each other and clash, but also complement each other. That was the kind of the magic of that pairing for me. Once I've got Millie in my head, and somebody she could kind of take the mick out of a little bit, but also absolutely adored, then I kind of had those two chatting in my head pretty much constantly for a few months. And that's the kind of the origin of the book, is just these two friends who just keep chatting in my head. And it was a fairly pretty thin plot for a long while, but actually I seem to make it fairly complicated in the end. It took me a long time to write, but mainly it's two friends who adore each other, just chatting for a whole book pretty much.
Well, it feels like a lot more got us through the roller coaster. We were actually commenting about how every single character felt like it had layers to make them so realistic. And we all said about how amazing that was, because it made you love them, and feel what they felt. So that was incredible.
That's really good to hear, because it took me a long time to write, actually, because I think this is such a simple story. It's just a friends to lovers, and it's taken me so flipping long. Most drafts I've done of a book, I think. But because it is focusing on those two characters and not much plot, there is nowhere to hide at all. So, I had to bring the depth of those characters out. The chemistry had to be there. There had to be enough interest to pull you through the book. With the kind of secondary characters, they took longer than maybe a standalone book, because I'm setting up kind of a world for the whole series. So they're not going to be throwaway characters so much, because they'll appear again. So they needed more thought. So yeah, this simple friends to lovers just took me flipping ages to write.
Well, it was amazing.
I think it was time well spent. No, you're
just one quick point while we're talking about secondary characters. Sorry, Jade. Melina has asked, what is your absolute favorite secondary character that you've written from any of your books or from Millie? Favorite secondary character?
I've no idea, because I really do like secondary characters. I think probably that's something that is quite noticeable about my works, is that I do spend, I bring in quite colourful characters around the place. So that's really tricky to answer, just as tricky as main characters, I think. Even from Millie, I'm hard pressed to pick one, because I've talked about Nicola already, who I just find just awful and brilliant at the same time. It's a fascinating character for me. And then there's Olivia, who I adore as well, because she's so perfect and judgmental, and Millie needles her and she skewers her right back. They were incredible fun to write on the page. It's just lots of tension, and banter there, you know, which is quite unusual for the romance. You know, there is quite a substantial relationship between Charlotte and Olivia, and Millie and Olivia in a very opposite kind of way. So that's lots of fun to write. And then Virginia, on, you know, I've had, you know, people like Virginia in my life, and I loved her to bits. So I can't choose. I'm really sorry. Those three, I mean, I think they're the most fleshed out in the book for this one. There you go. My favourite three from that one book.
I also loved Virginia. That I think a lot of my laugh out loud moments were things that she said. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to grow up to be her someday. I've got a couple comments and then a question here. So Aoife said, if we get Nicola's story, can we get flashbacks again? Because I'm curious if she was anything like Charlotte growing up. I've got one. I love the Fingersmith reference. Wonderful book indeed. Oh, the longing to kiss the palm of a hand without the glove. Charlotte is a romantic nerd, and I love her fiercely for that, because same. And then A.L. Brooks said, which is Claire's favorite character in this book? So you gave us 3 side characters, but if you had to pick one, main characters, side characters, like, who did you enjoy writing the most? Who did you like the most? We got lots of character questions.
I just can't choose because they're very different, and I think but it is really difficult. I think out of all my books, they're the favourite couple that I've written. Yeah, so the 2 characters together, and how they relate to each other, and how they change, and how they appreciate each other, and just the, you know, the adoration between them right from the first moment. There's that spark, you know, from page 1, and it just deepens, and if there are more facets to it just the whole way through, means that I can't decide between them. It was quite balanced for me, this one, and that's why I think they're my favorite couple that I've written. So have I mentioned that I'm quite bad at choosing?
Well, I think they're all great, so it's hard to choose. I think I would have a hard time picking it too. So I don't blame you. On the subject of characters, we've got a fun one here. If you could invite 5 characters from any of your books to a dinner party, who would you choose and why? 5 characters to a dinner party.
I'm going to go for the older characters. I think. I don't know if you read the Goodmans, but I'm going to have Maggie Goodman round. I mean, because there's fireworks and whenever she's about, so I've got to have her there. Virginia around as well. They might hit it off, I think. And then I don't think they'd hit it off with Nicola Albright, but I want to see what happens when she comes round too. And I'm going to sit on the sidelines. I think I'm going to have Geeta around. Me and Geeta are going to watch the fireworks from a distance, and then maybe Poppy Jenkins' mum Emma, she can come and chill with us as well. And I think that's my evening sorted.
But I would also be on the sidelines. I think I'd enjoy watching it, but I don't know if I'd want to be in the middle of that. It sounds kind of explosive. So I've got one here from Erin. A scene that stood out to me most was the pool scene. It felt like it was a huge moment for Millie and solidified her feelings for Charlotte. I'd love to hear where your thoughts were when writing such a sexy scene.
Where are my thoughts of that? I mean, that was just, you know, kind of comic sexy scene for me. It's kind of because Millie is this very confident sexual person, and she's completely utterly undone by this, you know, this very unintentional, completely clumsy seduction. It's just, I quite like that contrast of this very a woman who is very confident sexually just being undone by mistake. It's a comedy of it in a way, And only someone like Millie, I think, could cope with that kind of scene as well. So there could not so many characters you can pull that off with, but I think I could with Millie. So that was a lot of fun, I think. Well, for me anyway.
It was a lot of fun for us too, I think. And I agree. I think I enjoyed what was happening in the scene. I was enjoying like Olivia's observation of it. I was enjoying Millie's reaction to her own feelings. You know, it was really funny. And kind of Charlotte's cluelessness, because I feel like it was a nice reversal of what we'd seen before for Charlotte to be kind of clueless, and I really appreciated that. Jess, do you have some more questions?
I have a few questions and some comments here. So I've got from Caroline. She said she's reading Jessica Lambert at the moment, and now that you say it, Penny does remind her of Millie. So connection. And then
that was who I had in mind as the bubbly extrovert character for what was meant to be a series of Finding Jessica Lambert. So yeah, spot on. And I really regretted that I didn't get to her story, and I was desperate to write that kind of character.
Quick question from me. So would there be a possibility we could see Jessica and Anna like in this world? Like, is there any universe that could happen? Like maybe they go on holiday to Oxford.
I didn't have any plans to. I'll say that much.
You didn't say no. Okay. So I've got a question here from Summer. Was there any characters who somehow didn't make it to the final story but were originally thought of?
No, I don't think I cut anybody out or many scenes, actually. I'm a plotter in general. I tend to I think about the characters, daydream up the scenes. For weeks, months, I'm jotting down dialogue, snippets of dialogue, scene ideas, setting ideas, characteristics. I wrote about 40,000 words of just notes for this one, and before I even sit down to start the story. So by the time that I'm writing chapter 1, I've got a really good idea of the scenes and who I want to keep. I mean, it doesn't go, it's not plain sailing or predictable from there, because you develop the characters, you find out about them. It's still really exciting to do that, but I possibly don't have as many major changes as maybe other authors who just sit down and kind of write from chapter 1 and see where it goes. So I find I don't have such big structural changes as other writers, perhaps.
I've got a question here from Aoife. How many post-it notes are currently on your wall?
There are none, which is quite a bad sign, which means I'm a bit behind with this one. They'll be there though. It's before I start chapter 1. So at the moment, the second story, I'm still note taking, and then I'll do an outline, and that's when the post-it notes start coming out. And they're the scenes, or they're kind of dramatic points, or emotional highlights in different colours. That sounds way more organised than it actually is. That sounds like I have a real scheme going that helps me visualise it, but it's way more random than that. But yeah, the post-it notes start to appear, and they stay there until it's finished, and they fall off the wall and they fly out the window sometimes as well, which isn't very helpful when you're trying to follow them. But no, they're not there yet. They will be.
So if we see a tweet that says post-its on the wall, we'll know what that means now, that you're plotting the scenes out.
That's it. If there's a full set of post-it notes across my window, I do post a lot of the kind of picture of kind of my writing corner in the attic, that if you see those notes across there, I've got my outline, I'm on my way.
Love it. I've got a question here from Clara. Do you have a ritual for your writing? Like when you sit down to write? Music, snacks, favorite hoodie?
No, I don't think I do actually. It's I probably should. It would probably help make me sit down in the damn chair and do some work. I should probably get one. I shall start.
You should. One more. I've got, your writing style is very enticing. It's nearly impossible to put the book down. Do you know how the story will go and end when you start writing the book, or do you just play it by ear sometimes? And that was from Alona.
Yeah, no, I've planned. I usually have an idea, quite a solid idea of where the book's going. It will change sometimes, not radically, but the scenes to get there, I'll probably just have a rough idea, but I'll find that I have a better idea once I'm into the story, something that works better. So I'm not inflexible about it. I'm not that well planned, but I tend to divide the story into several parts usually, but it falls into about 5 parts, and I will be getting, at the end of each part, there's a kind of, an emotional point to get to, or a development that I'll be aiming towards. And I'll usually have a good idea of, after, part 1, where I want to be, where the characters are, where I want them to be emotionally, or there's been a dramatic reveal, for example. So I usually have a pretty good idea of what I want to achieve, at least, but maybe the scenes to achieve that might change more. I think that's probably the bit that changes most, but kind of just the emotional kind of shape of the story, the realizations, the revelations, there I have a very good idea of those, at least.
Cool. Well, a few more questions. Anyone else, if you have to leave, don't worry. We are going to put this Q&A on the on our YouTube channel, so just send any questions to Jade or me, and we'll make sure we try and slot it in. Okay, so Jade, have you got any?
Yeah, I've got a couple different light, maybe kind of easy ones. I've got 3 of them. Do you have any surprising hidden talents?
I don't think I do. I think because I witter on social media about pretty much everything, I don't think there's anything surprising about me left, actually. I'm fairly open about pretty much everything. I suppose kind of as far as my kids are concerned, my major talents are reading stories to them and bringing them alive, doing all the voices. They think my food is marvelous because they just really haven't experienced kind of enough food other places. They think I'm a brilliant cook, and I'm good for cuddles. So these are probably people don't know about those talents, but as far as my kids are concerned, those are the major ones.
Yeah, I think those are good. I think our kids always, I don't know, I feel like mine are very generous in their assessment of me. So that's always nice. Do you have any hobbies outside of books and writing, and what are they?
I guess I'm really a big outdoor enthusiast. I kind of walking in the hills and getting out and seaside or coastal walks. So that's I need my fix of fresh air and countryside. So that's kind of what I try and do as much as possible, especially with the kids as well. That's the main one. But yeah, it did used to be the writing before. I did that kind of it's my part-time job, actually, writing, between, because my wife works such long hours, it's always fallen to me to kind of cover the kids during holidays and pick them up from school and things. So I've always needed something to fit in around that. So that's what the writing's done.
Very cool. I've seen some of your hiking and outdoor photos, and it's so beautiful. So I think we're lucky to get to see that. So the last one I have here right now is, if you hadn't been a writer, what would you have done?
I don't know at this point. I've never really had a clear kind of career idea. It's kind of, I've always kind of muddled along, trying a few things. I was a software engineer last, but I don't really like computers that much. So it wasn't the greatest career choice, to be fair. I think, and at this point, I'd just be babbling in a corner somewhere trying to tell a story to someone who might listen. It's got to that point, I think.
I can relate to that. I went and got a software engineering degree, and I hate writing code, so I find that very relatable. All right, Jess, do you have any more questions? I think I don't have any more in my chat.
Yeah, I've got some here. I've got a comment first from Summer. She wants to say that she found the book cover for Meet and Millie absolutely fascinating. It's beautiful. So I agree with Summer. I loved it. It was awesome.
It's the first time I've paid for an artist to actually draw a cover for my books, and it came back because I had a strong idea in mind for the 3 books and the settings, and I just couldn't find enough images on image libraries, picture libraries that were suitable for the whole series and the books. So I had to sort of ask around for if illustrators were available, and had to wait for this one. She's a very popular illustrator, very busy, so I had to wait a long time for. It was absolutely worth it. I absolutely adore the cover. I love how she's captured both of them, the vibe of them and the place. It's a real treat to have that. It's the first time that I've been able to do that with one of my books, and because I just couldn't find anything that suited it and the whole series properly. But I'm in love with the cover. I think she's just done an amazing job with it.
It is. It's beautiful. And I've got another one here from Joanne. Were there any challenges you encountered in writing the story?
I mean, the biggest challenge for me is always just to sit down and write the damn thing. So there's always that challenge. Every book I do, I always try to do something. I don't try to do something different. I don't get interested enough to sit down and write the story unless there is something that challenges me. For this one, it's kind of the start of a series. That's a new thing for me. Also, that the character of Millie is quite different for a lead character in a Sapphic romance. So that was she's fairly controversial, actually. She's blunt, she's brash, she's extrovert, she likes men, she's unapologetic for it, she's unashamed. But so some people really aren't going to like that at all. I mean, I absolutely adore her. She's based on, several women I've met in my life who are that kind of unashamed, gobby woman who's really flirty, and I've always adored, so I'm a bit like Charlotte, kind of a bit of a moth to a flame to that kind of character with hearts in my eyes. So I absolutely love that kind of character, but she will wind some people up. So I think I'm putting that as a challenge, actually, but I mean, I suppose that was an interesting way into the book for me, that a very different character to you see normally. But I guess it wasn't a challenge because I love her so much, and she's based on some people I really adore as well. So that didn't really answer it, did it? Sorry.
It was still great. I have one from Mary. It's got, at the end of last year, there was a tweet you put up about different names for breasts. It was a fun thread. I noticed that only boobs and breasts made it into the book. Was that thread back then about this book or another one?
It would have been this one. It would have been this one. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, I've got a reputation of having, quite a lot of descriptions of boobs in my books, but I'm not really, it's kind of, that's Sapphic fiction for you. There's a lot of boobage going on in a lot of Sapphic fiction, isn't there? So I'm not really sure how you want it, but I kind of kept it simple, except the swimming pool scene. Kind of really went big time for that one with a description of, I can't remember the phrase now. Anyway, went a bit over the top on that one. That was fun for me anyway. I'm not sure some people approve, but it was fun for me. I do write the books for me, I have to admit. Which does get me into trouble, I think, sometimes, like having a Millie character who isn't very typical of a Sapphic romance, perhaps, but it's interesting to me, and I've got to have something that is for me in there. So again, I'm not sure what the question was, if I've answered it, but
you answered it. It's all good. That actually leads me on to this next question I've got from Dali. I hope I've said it correctly. Which character from any of your books do you resonate with the most?
I don't know. I don't know which character I'm like most either, because I think like a lot of writers, I tend to put little traits of mine, or likes or dislikes of mine. I kind of scatter them around the whole character list. I even asked my wife, who do I most resemble out of all my characters, and she said, it's none of them really, which is it's odd in a way. One of them must be like me, surely. But who do I maybe at this point in my life, I'm kind of, my sympathies or empathy is with Poppy Jenkins' mum, who's a bit chilled and tired and just wants, to chill out while everybody goes mad around. And my kids are like 10 and 12 now. And I have found that I am turning into this kind of mum who is just going to make a bad joke or smile, because if you don't, you're going to go nuts like the kids are, and all their new hormones and all that craziness. So I think I'm turning into this just mellow mum who's just going with the flow now, I think. Again, I'm not sure if I've answered the question.
I think you did. You gave us a good, solid answer. I'm mindful of the time, because obviously we've got a time zone of the world, and so I figured we'll just do 2 more questions. Is that okay? That wasn't one of them, but it's 2 more questions.
It's fine with me, absolutely fine with me.
Okay, so I've got one here. Why did you decide on a cheese toastie for their meet cute / like the choice of food that kept reuniting them throughout the entire book? And question 1, part A, are you like a value cheese kind of person, or are you a posh cheese kind of person?
The second one first. Any cheese, I like cheese. I don't care if it's posh or not. I'm there, cheese slices, crumbly top-notch cheddar. I really don't care. I just like cheese. The cheese toasty thing. I mean, it was a good buddy of mine had a cheese, a sandwich maker when I was at college. I was very envious of that. I couldn't afford one, but I always used to go into their room for cheese toasties. So that's a very distinct memory for me, and I love those cheese toasties and that buddy. And also it's kind of a little slight reference to kind of it's not a toaster oven, but it's kind of there a little bit. So that's kind of just amusing me, I'm afraid. It's kind of just one of those little things that I put in there that it's probably only for me, like the Nicola Albright sentence, but in it goes because it keeps me interested.
Awesome. And everyone loves cheese toasties. Okay, have you got any more, Jade? Last one? No? Okay, the final one I've got, we'll end it on a sweet note, I think. You talk a lot about families in your books, friends to lovers, second chances, etc., etc. Would you say that the reason why you do that is because family is so important in your own life? Does your own life inspire the tropes that you write so well?
I love family dramas. I always have, though, even before having kids of my own. I think the appeal of it is that you bring different generations in. So I always like mature women characters, and it brings those in very naturally. I think that's most of the appeal, actually, just to get those different generations in. As if you have a group of friends, it tends to be a bit more the same characters, where you can get different tensions in with different intergenerational conflict, and also how people behave to friends versus their parents or grandparents is very different. So you get to see different sides of different characters very easily by mixing it up with family as well as friends and work colleagues. And I love that, because I like to have the tensions and the banter that between families as well as friends. So family is huge in my life. My life does revolve around family, kind of looking after the kids. Again, I have absolutely no idea where the question started, but I hope I've answered it.
You did. It was perfect. Okay, well, I think that's a good end point for everyone. So have we all had a good time? Yay! Thank you so much, Clare, not only for writing an incredible book, but writing all the incredible books that you've written. We can't wait to get the next installment and another book club, maybe, for next one. And thank you so much for joining us for this Q&A. It's amazing, so thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me. Authors love to talk about their books. Honestly, you should never hesitate to invite authors. They'll be on here. No hesitating. They love talking about books.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good afternoon, evening, and happy reading.